Harold Winchester had spent 40 years building his fortune in the textile business, and at 68, he had more money than he could spend in 3 lifetimes. Yet something was missing from his grand estate on Maple Hill Drive. The loneliness echoed through the 14 rooms of his Victorian mansion, even louder than his footsteps on the polished hardwood floors. His wife Margaret had passed 5 years ago, and their only son lived across the country with grandchildren. Harold rarely saw when the employment agency sent Maria Santos to interview for the housekeeping position. Harold barely looked up from his morning newspaper. She was in her early 50s with kind eyes and calloused hands that spoke of a lifetime of honest work. Maria had raised 3 children on her own after her husband died in a construction accident 12 years earlier. Her youngest daughter, Elena, was starting college in the fall, and Maria needed this job to help pay for tuition. Harold hired her not because he was particularly impressed, but because he needed someone and she seemed competent enough. The first few weeks passed quietly. Maria arrived at 7 each morning and worked until 4, cleaning, dusting, and preparing simple meals. She moved through the house like a gentle breeze, straightening what needed straightening and leaving everything spotless. What Harold didn't expect was how her presence would change the atmosphere of his home. She hummed old Spanish lullabies while she worked, and the sound drifted through the halls like a warm embrace. When she arranged flowers from the garden in the front parlor, the whole room seemed to brighten. But Harold was a cautious man who had learned through years in business that people often had hidden motives, especially when money was involved. He decided to test Maria in a way that would reveal her true character. On a Tuesday morning in late September, Harold deliberately left his wall safe open. The heavy steel door hung ajar, revealing stacks of cash bonds and jewelry that had belonged to Margaret. Inside were easily $50,000 in bills, and precious items worth far more. Harold positioned himself in his study, where he could see the hallway leading to his bedroom through the partially open door. He waited with his heart pounding, wondering if this kind woman who sang while she worked was just another person who would betray his trust when given the opportunity. Maria entered his bedroom at exactly 9:30, as she did every Tuesday, to change the linens and dust the furniture. Harold watched as she noticed the open safe immediately. She stopped in her tracks and stared at the contents for what felt like an eternity. Then something remarkable happened. Maria walked directly to the safe, but instead of reaching inside, she gently pushed the heavy door closed until she heard the lock click. She tested the handle to make sure it was secure, then continued with her work as if nothing had happened. Harold sat in stunned silence, watching as Maria carefully made his bed, fluffed the pillows, and dusted each surface with the same attention she gave every room. When she finished, she quietly left, closing the bedroom door behind her. That afternoon, when Maria came to say goodbye before leaving, Harold stopped her in the front hall. His hands trembled slightly as he asked her if she had noticed anything unusual in his bedroom that morning. Maria looked at him with those honest eyes and nodded slowly. She said she had seen that his safe was open and worried that someone might have broken in. She explained that she had closed it to keep his belongings secure and hoped she had done the right thing. Harold felt something crack open in his chest, something that had been sealed shut for far too long. He realized that this woman who earned in a year what he spent on a single vacation had proven herself more trustworthy than business associates who had stolen from him, despite having fortunes of their own. Over the following weeks, Harold found himself looking forward to Maria's arrival each morning. He began staying home more often just to hear her humming and to catch glimpses of how she cared for his home as if it were her own. When she prepared his lunch, Maria would sometimes share stories about her children. Her oldest son, Diego, was a teacher in the local elementary school. Her daughter, Carmen, worked as a nurse at the county hospital. And Elena, her youngest, was studying to become a social worker. Harold learned that Maria sent money to her elderly mother in Mexico every month, and that she volunteered at the church food bank on weekends despite working 6 days a week. She never complained about her long hours or the ache in her back from years of physical labor. One evening in October, Harold made a decision that surprised even himself. He asked Maria to stay after work because he wanted to talk with her about something important. Maria sat nervously in the living room, wondering if she had done something wrong. Harold took a deep breath and told her about the test with the safe. He explained how he had watched her close it and walk away from a sum of money that could have changed her life. He said he had never encountered such honesty, and it had moved him deeply. Maria listened quietly, then smiled and said she had been raised to believe that taking what belonged to others was like stealing from herself. It would have made her feel empty inside no matter how much money she might have gained. Harold felt tears building in his eyes as he realized this humble woman understood something about wealth that he had forgotten. Money meant nothing if it came at the cost of your integrity and peace of mind. That evening, Harold did something he hadn't done in decades. He invited Maria to have dinner with him instead of eating alone in his vast dining room. They sat at the kitchen table sharing stories and laughing together. Harold discovered that Maria had a sharp wit and a perspective on life that came from facing hardships with grace. From that day forward, their relationship changed. Harold began asking Maria about her family and her dreams. He learned that Elena was struggling to pay for textbooks and that Diego's school needed supplies. Harold quietly arranged for anonymous donations that would help without making Maria feel uncomfortable. When winter arrived, Harold noticed that Maria was coughing frequently and that her coat was worn thin. He casually mentioned that he had ordered too many winter coats by mistake, and would she mind taking one home rather than having it go to waste. Maria accepted the gift with grateful tears. As Christmas approached, Harold realized he had been happier these past few months than he had been since Margaret died. Maria had brought warmth and life back into his home, not through any grand gestures, but through her daily kindness and genuine care. On Christmas Eve, Harold gave Maria an envelope along with her regular pay. Inside was enough money to cover Elena's entire college tuition, plus a bonus for each of her other children. Maria opened it and immediately began to cry. She tried to give it back, saying it was too much, but Harold insisted. He told her that she had given him something far more valuable than money. She had restored his faith in human goodness and had made him remember what it felt like to be part of a family again. Harold explained that he had been testing her character that first day with the safe, but she had been testing his character every day since through her kindness and integrity. She had passed his test, but more importantly, he hoped he was finally passing hers. Maria hugged Harold tightly, something she had never done before, and told him that he had been like a father to her, providing not just employment, but dignity and respect. She said that working for him had taught her that generosity of spirit mattered more than generosity with money, though she was grateful for both over the years that followed. Harold and Maria became like family. Harold attended Elena's graduation and walked her down the aisle at her wedding. He became an honorary grandfather to Maria's grandchildren, who called him Abuelo Harold. When Harold turned 75, Maria organized a surprise party with all her children and their families. Harold had never felt so loved or so grateful for the day he decided to leave that safe open. It had been meant as a trap, but it had become the doorway to the most meaningful relationship of his later years. Harold learned that true wealth wasn't measured in dollars and cents, but in the connections we make and the trust we build. Maria had taught him that kindness is a choice we make every day, and that the people who have the least to give often give the most. When Harold finally updated his will, he left Maria the house on Maple Hill Drive along with enough money to ensure she would never have to worry about her future. He knew that she would fill those 14 rooms with the same love and warmth she had brought to his life. The safe still sits in the bedroom wall, but now it holds something far more precious than money or jewelry. Inside, Harold keeps every card and letter Maria and her family have given him over the years. These paper treasures remind him daily that the best investments we make are in human hearts, and that kindness always pays the highest dividends. Sometimes the most profound tests of character come not in moments of great drama, but in the quiet choices we make when no one is watching. Maria had passed such a test without even knowing she was being tested, and in doing so, had taught an old man that it is never too late to open your heart to the possibility of love and connection. The house on Maple Hill Drive no longer echoes with loneliness. Instead, it rings with laughter and conversation, as Maria continues to care for Harold, and he continues to be amazed by her generous spirit. Their friendship proves that family is not always defined by blood, but by the people who choose to stand by us and love us exactly as we are. In a world that often feels cold and disconnected, their story